Hello and welcome back to the High Altitude Investing live stream. Today is the 28th of November. Super excited about today's stream and the stuff we're going to be talking about. Go ahead and share links on Discord and on X here to help get everything going. And yeah, we'll get started with today's live stream. So happy Friday, everybody. Hopefully you guys had an awesome Thanksgiving today, or yesterday, I mean, and that you're enjoying your Black Friday. And yeah, let's get started with Bitcoin here. Pull up the good old BTC chart. And this is a pretty important update on crypto, you guys. We have a pretty key stuff is happening in the crypto markets right now. And you definitely want to be aware of what's going on so you can make the right decisions with your capital during this phase of the market. Operation Shutdown, what is up? Welcome to today's live stream. Good to see you tuning in. Matt Osty, welcome. Good to see you tuning in. So as you guys know, Bitcoin has had a pretty positive reaction off of this lower support level here. We'd had a pretty big move up off of this low right here. I mean, pretty big, 15%. That's not too bad here. And we've started to see a little bit of strength coming into some of the coins in the market. So let's take a look here at what's kind of going on from an Elliott wave perspective on Bitcoin. So we have wave A right here, wave B right here, and wave C right here. So this is a big ABC correction on Bitcoin. And you can see this pretty clearly when you count the Elliott waves. Now, in fact, the best way to do this actually is to go over to Coinbase, because on Binance we have a crazy wick that doesn't show up on the other exchanges. So it helps you count the Elliott waves a little bit more clearly here. So here on Coinbase, if we draw our A wave right here, our B wave right here, and our C wave right here, then you can see we have 5 waves down from. So if you don't know the way that zigzag corrections work, go to Google and check out what a zigzag correction is. And before I get too far into this, I do want to also mention that today is the last day of the Black Friday sale to get 50% off on VIP products. So make sure you click the link in the description box below to get started with lifetime VIP signals, a single coaching call with me, or one-on-one coaching. So make sure you take advantage of that 50% off on the VIP products, because they're all going to revert back to their original price tomorrow. Just use the coupon code Black Friday. So as you can see here, we have an ABC correction on Bitcoin. If you don't know the way that these zigzags work, let's pull up a zigzag correction here off Google Images, and we'll drop it onto the chart. So we'll paste it right here. So here's a zigzag ABC correction. Now, in between the top of where the correction starts to the bottom of wave A, we have 5 waves down. So we have wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, and wave 5. So that's in between the top here and the bottom of wave A. Let's go ahead and make this like a super cycle so it's really easy to see the A and the B and the C. So from the top down to A, we have 5 waves down. Now from A to B, we should have an ABC correction up. So as you can see, we have A, B, and C. Now let's take this and drop this to a submicro. So there's our subwaves from A to B. So from 0 to A and from A to B, we have our subwave count. Now we should be able to count 5 waves from B to C down. And that's exactly what we see here with Bitcoin. We see wave 1, 2, 3, 4, and then an extended 5th wave down from 4 to 5. So this is a complete zigzag correction here on Bitcoin, which is why we've started to see a bullish reaction off of these lows. This is really the type of structure that you're looking for a reversal. in the market, to see a local bottom put in place and to see all of these subwaves in place here from B to C gives me a lot of confidence that we are starting to bottom out down here on Bitcoin. Obviously, the whole way up here, we've seen little corrections along the way up. We saw one just recently here, a little bit of a sell-off. But overall, we're starting to see the early signs of a recovery here on Bitcoin. Now, if we zoom out a little bit, let's go to the daily and we'll take all our drawing tools off the chart. Bitcoin is behaving a lot like the S&P 500. Now that we have big institutions, I talked about this in my last live stream. So let's pull up the S&P 500 here. Here's the S&P 500 during one of its recent corrections. You can see how violent this drop off was. Very violent drop, followed by a violent recovery. So this is what the stock market has a tendency to do. We have these big crashes, these big violent drops, followed by violent recoveries in the market. And we see that over and over again. If we go look back here during COVID, same thing, right? Sharp decline, followed by a very sharp V-shaped recovery. Again, back over here too in 2019, or I guess technically 2018, we had the same thing happen on the S&P 500. So this is the way the stock market moves, really. The stock market has a tendency, because of the big institutions, what happens in the stock market is we get these big violent drops, followed by very sharp V-shaped recoveries. And this type of structure right here happens over and over and over again in the stock market. And Bitcoin is really looking a lot like the stock market, which is no surprise considering the fact that big institutions have been trading and investing in the crypto markets, especially since 2017, but really since 2021, where we started to see significant institutional accumulation, especially during the FTX crash. Big institutions have just been picking up billions of dollars worth of crypto, whether it be Bitcoin or altcoins, ever since then. And technically, a lot of altcoins have seen a big correction since the peak in 2021. Only a few of them have recovered, which is actually a sign for me that this market still has a big recovery coming in the altcoin markets, because those big institutions have been accumulating all of those altcoins dirt cheap in these big, massive accumulation patterns and structures. So it's looking really good. Chris, what is up? Thank you for tuning in. And thank you for the donation. I genuinely appreciate that. Someone on TradingView said the S&P completed its cup and handle and exceeded it, but Bitcoin did not yet, and said BTC will hit 250K to complete the cycle. Yeah, so that's 100% possible. If we look at Bitcoin right now, let's go over here and zoom out. We did have a big cup and handle here on Bitcoin. This is something we were looking at, as you guys know, in the VIP area. We were looking at this cup and handle, and publicly on my channel too, a little bit, talking about how bullish Bitcoin was here in the handle. And we did get a big breakout here on Bitcoin based on that cup and handle. You can see we had a big breakout through resistance all the way up to 124,000 per coin. But the thing is with the cup and handle pattern is you can actually measure a minimum target. So this big cup right here and this big handle right here, this pattern gives you a minimum target in the market. What you do is you measure from the bottom of the pattern up to the top of the pattern here, where the resistance of the pattern is. You draw a horizontal line going across the top of the pattern. A lot of people will make this dotted just to kind of make it obvious that this is the neckline of the cup and handle. And you put your target up here. This is the minimum target for the cup and handle on Bitcoin, which would be 131,000, which we did not reach. So the thing with the cup and handle pattern, you're going to reach your minimum target 90% of the time or 80% of the time. A huge majority of the time. We didn't quite reach that minimum target here on Bitcoin. So just based on this cup and handle, we should still have some juice left up towards that level. Now, if we start to go back up towards 130,000, this is going to be a huge continuation structure on Bitcoin. And this is actually what I expect to have happen, is a big reversal here. This will basically lead to a big broadening triangle wedge right here, and that will be a huge continuation pattern for Bitcoin. I've been calling for 250K per Bitcoin for quite some time. I could easily see us reaching that level. Now, of course, that is higher than the minimum target for the cup and handle, but I have other reasons for believing that Bitcoin will at least reach 250,000 before this market is done doing what it's doing. Chris says, why is it different on the log scale? He used the log chart to measure 250K from the measured move on the cup and handle. So the log and the linear chart do have differences. So if we pull up the logarithmic chart here, the thing with the logarithmic chart you have to understand is the logarithmic chart measures based on percentage and the linear chart measures based on a linear scale. So there is going to be a difference in targets when you look at the two different charts. So if we take our resistance up here and we draw the cup and handle like this, same cup and handle, same spot in the market, but if we pull from the bottom up to the top and place this on top, then yes, that does show closer to 250,000 as a logarithmic target based on that cup and handle pattern for Bitcoin. So you will get different targets based on whether you're looking at the linear scale or the logarithmic scale. It's actually important to pay attention to both of those targets and be looking at both of them in the market, because you really don't know which one it's going to go to for sure. You have to look at other things in the market too to give you additional context as to what target you're going to reach and where the market's going to go. That's why I never just use a single trading strategy. I'm never using one. My trading strategy is simple. I don't use 100,000 things in my trading strategy, but I don't use one thing because you want to have additional things to give you context, to give you a better idea of where the market could go, because you can have one trading pattern telling you one target, and if you look at more trading patterns, more strategies, it can give you more confluence, more perspective, to give you a more complete target in the market. But my target for Bitcoin is 250K, and it's been that for a while. I could even see it going higher than 250K in the big picture, but my target is 250K per Bitcoin. Solar Sound Design says, Dallin, my brother, what is up? Love to you, bro. Keep doing your thing. To anyone new here, I've known this guy for almost 10 years, and he's spot on 95% of the time. Absorb his knowledge. Well, thank you, Solar Sound Design. Good to see you tuning in. And yeah, thank you for taking the time to tune in on your Black Friday to this little live stream. So, enough about Bitcoin. I expect a very sharp V-shaped recovery coming on Bitcoin. Just like what we saw in the stock market, Bitcoin has behaved a lot more like how the S&P 500 does ever since big institutions are here. And really, you know, that's no surprise. Big institutions are going to do a little bit of a different kind of market tricks in the market, you know, hat tricks, if you want to call them hat tricks, to trick people than what retail is going to be doing. Retail, back in 2017, it was a very retail-driven market. We started to see some institutional volume coming in, but in 2017, it was predominantly retail. Now, big institutions started to accumulate a little bit in 2017, but in 2018, they started to come in more, and by the time 2021 had come around, big institutions were like officially here. And ever since 2021, this market has been behaving a lot different than it did in 2017. A lot more like how the stock market behaves, a lot more expanded flats, a lot more just stuff that people, you know, that's less common textbook trading patterns. In 2017, this market just did a bunch of textbook ascending triangles, a bunch of perfect triangles. There wasn't near as many expanded flat corrections like we see all the time now in this market. And so the market is behaving differently than it used to. And this is actually a sign of market maturity, that the fact that Bitcoin is behaving more like the stock market, that's a sign of market maturity. Big institutions are here, the market cap is bigger, it's going to behave less like a penny stock and more like a stock, like a real stock, you know. Do you prefer the log chart or the linear chart? I use both of them pretty frequently. Most of the time I'm on the linear chart, but I do check the log chart very frequently. It's not like I prefer one over the other. For me, they're both very powerful tools for understanding what's happening in the market, and you pretty much just want to use them both in conjunction with each other frequently too. Like for example, on the log chart, on the logarithmic chart, you have a lot better trend line, like trend lines are respected more on the log chart. Like we have this trend line right here on Bitcoin. It goes back to about right here, right? Where we tested this low right here, this low right here, this low right here, and now we're testing this low again. So logarithmic trend lines are going to be more powerful than a linear trend line is. Linear trend lines will fail a lot more often than the logarithmic trend line will. You can see how useful this trend line would have been back in 2017 and how useful this trend line would have been as well. Once we broke below that level, the bear market really started. So logarithmic trend lines are more useful. They both have their pros, their cons. If I'm studying market cycles, I usually use the linear chart. If I'm looking for important trend lines or just a big picture trend, just to look at the trend over a long period of time, I'll use the logarithmic chart. So they just have different purposes, really. Nutcracker says, thoughts on Stronghold. You know, I haven't looked at Stronghold for a minute, so I'm glad you brought that up because I haven't checked at the chart for a good minute, and it's one I've been bullish on. This still looks really good, you guys. I love Stronghold. This looks a lot like early day cycles. So if you don't know the way the markets move early on in their cycles, so there's kind of a structure to markets until they're parabolic, until they're just going straight vertical like this. You know, once they're going vertical, they don't really do this. But before they go vertical, they will have these big, choppy, crazy corrections like this, you know. A lot of times the market will look exactly like how Stronghold looks right now, where you'll have a pump, a pullback, followed by another pump. And sometimes that pullback goes below that support level like this and goes like that and then goes up. And sometimes that pullback is more like this, where you go up, back down, and then you consolidate right there, and then you go up like that. So early on in the trend, you'll get a lot more choppiness. That's what we see here with Stronghold. Once you're going parabolic like this, then you're going to see more like what we see with Bitcoin, where we see corrections, but they're sharp, followed by sharp recoveries. But early on in the trend, there's a lot more volatility. There's a lot more structure like this, like we see on Stronghold in these markets. And here with Stronghold, this is a pretty typical running flat correction. So we have wave A, wave B, and wave C. So that's a running flat here on Stronghold. This is a continuation Elliott wave structure. So what we'd expect here is a very sharp recovery here, like a big rounded recovery here on Stronghold, or even something like this with a cup and handle sort of attitude to it, right? With a bit of a cup and handle point. But definitely a strong recovery in the bigger picture here, followed by a big pump. A lot of people thought 2025 was going to be the year for crypto. But in 2025, we really only saw, to be honest with you guys, in 2025, we really only saw a Bitcoin pump. There was Zcash too, which we called in the VIP area, which was super fun to trade. But there wasn't really a lot of other stuff pumping in 2025. So everybody thought 2025 was going to be big for crypto, like a big, big year for crypto. And it really wasn't. I mean, right now the price is pretty much as it was at the beginning of the year. So it wasn't a very big year for crypto. So now that everybody thinks 2026 is going to be a really bad year for crypto, I see 2026 as being a very, very good year for crypto. So this coming year, I expect a lot of prosperity in these markets, A lot of what people were wanting to happen in 2025 will happen in 2026. It's going to be very exciting, and Stronghold certainly will not be left behind in this big 2026 pump. So that's what I expect coming for Stronghold. And by the way, thank you for tuning in, Nutcracker. Jacob Manning Yoga says, great LTC video. Well, thank you, Jacob. I appreciate you tuning in. Conscious Contact with a heart and a rocket. Thank you. Good to see you, my friend. Rico Hawk says, good day, Dallin. Thank you. Good day to you as well. Brian Kim, thanks, Dallin, for this live. What's your take on Velo at this point? I'll get to you in just a second. Alex wants me to cover silver. Cool. So yeah, I'll absolutely cover all your requests here. I do want to mention that today is my Black Friday sale, the last day to get 50% off on one-on-one coaching, as well as a single coaching call. Sometimes people just want to do one call to run over their portfolio and stuff like that. So in the description of this video, you'll see the coupon code Black Friday. You can get 50% off the last day to get 50% off on my lifetime VIP signals, single coaching call, or one-on-one coaching for 12 weeks. So definitely take advantage of that while you can. All right, so let's cover Wrapped Dog and Starknet first, and then we'll go into Velo and Silver as well. Pull up old Wrapped Dog. I haven't checked this in a minute, couple days or so. Really, it looks the same, you guys. It looks pretty much exactly like my last update on it. We're back. We're at this major support level here. This is what Ethereum did, by the way, when Ethereum bottomed out in 2018, 2019, and 2020. This is the same thing Ethereum did, and it's virtually identical. In fact, if we pull up the Ethereum chart, we go back over to 2018, 2019, and 2020. And you can see this is when Ethereum bottomed out. It's the exact same structure in the market. You can see a little bit of a false bottom here, a recovery up to resistance, pulling back down to support, big pump. Everybody thought this was going to be the real bottom, big shakeout to freak everybody out of the market, followed by a V-shaped recovery and a big pump. And if you look at Wrapped Dog, false bottom, big pump, crash. Everybody thinks is going to moon right here, you know. One more big crash. This structure is shockingly similar to Ethereum back in 2020, 2019, and 2018. So this is a strong kind of bottoming pattern that we've seen in these markets before. This was the spring on Ethereum, that final crash according to Wyckoff. You know, if you don't know about Wyckoff, it's pretty important. Let's see, Wyckoff trading pattern. If you look at this, there's usually one spring in the market, so it looks like the bottom, then you get one more low. So that's a Wyckoff accumulation structure here. And that's exactly what we saw here with Ethereum, especially in 2020, that final spring. And that's exactly what we're seeing on Wrapped Dog as well. Starknet, let's pull up old Stark. So Starknet is still calling for a big run on Stark. I know I mentioned this in one of my previous live streams as a gift to you guys to be aware of this coin, because I see a big run like Zcash, right? I called Zcash before it went to the moon, and I see a big run coming on Starknet as well for the exact same reasons. This setup is very, very good. Definitely one to be buying down here at dirt cheap prices in preparation for a move just like what happened on Zcash. So we have a big spike in volume down here. This, to me, is the bottom for Starknet. I see a strong recovery coming. That recovery should be very vertical in nature, just like what happened to Zcash. Sharp, parabolic, vertical off of these lows. The same co-founder created this as the co-founder that created Zcash. So Starknet is extremely undervalued down here at 13 cents. Perfect ABC correction. This is the kind of chart that I saw everywhere in 2020, right before the big run on altcoins in 2021. I saw this exact setup right here probably 100 times. in 2020 before we ran clear to the moon in 2021. And there's this same setup is popping up everywhere again, which leads me to believe that 2026 is going to be very similar to 2017 or 2021 in nature. So very good looking chart here with StarkNet. Telcoin, you guys know I'm a big Telcoin bull. I've been a Telcoin bull for quite some time. If we pull up Telcoin here, yeah, we did pull back a little bit. You have to understand, people buy the rumor, they sell the news. So I made a video about Telcoin right here, talking about some bearish divergence. I said, well, there's a potential cup and handle right here because there was a bit of a cup and handle, but I said also be aware because there was bearish divergence. So we did see a correction. People buy the rumor, they sell the news. So once we had that positive news about Telcoin and their banking regulation getting passed, that they're basically a bank now, Telcoin is, people got excited, but it sold off because they're selling, the big whales are selling the news. But I think the bottom is probably in after this little correction. We're probably in our local bottom now in the short term here on the 45-minute. The lowest I could see is one more little correction down like that before a reversal here on Telcoin like this. That's the lowest I could see, but I expect a reversal either way, whether it's right here or whether we go a little bit lower. We're really at that point we're going to continue back in our uptrend because the news that happened for this coin is extremely bullish, and we've only started to see a little bit of the bullishness coming because of the positive news on Telcoin. And if we zoom out here in the big picture, you guys know the drill, the fractal that we've been looking at for this coin for quite some time, and that is the Ethereum fractal in 2018 when Ethereum did the exact same structure as what we see here on Telcoin, a spitting image of the same human psychology. So here's Ethereum on the right and here's Telcoin on the left, and you can see this big correction on Ethereum back down to horizontal support, and this big correction here on Telcoin back to our horizontal support level. So this parabolic run that happened in 2021 on Ethereum, this is what I expect to have happen to Telcoin in 2026. And we'll probably see the beginnings of it throughout the rest of 2025. So this is an extremely good setup down here. It's worth 0.00 or 0.004 cents. So this is worth fractions of a penny. This is just a really good setup. This has like a lot of regulatory, positive regulatory legislation around it. This is a really good setup here on Telcoin. Definitely one to be aware of. So let's pull up Velo chart. Haven't checked out Velo in a minute, but my position on Velo hasn't changed since the last time I checked it out. I already know nothing has changed for Velo. Let's pull up the chart here. Again, you guys, these big corrections, people get afraid of big corrections. They don't understand human psychology. They think they should be buying when people are excited and selling when people are fearful. And I know it sounds like the most stupid, elementary, kindergarten thing to say, but you really should buy when people are afraid and sell when people are excited. And that's been proven to be extremely profitable in these markets. And you can look at the charts and see the psychology. It doesn't matter what people are saying on the news. It doesn't matter what you're reading in terms of news articles, in terms of, whatever you're seeing. Just look at the chart and determine, okay, are we in a state of euphoria or depression down here? Because Velo is in a state of depression, not euphoria. Euphoria happened in 2021, clear as day, just like it happened over here on Ethereum, right? This was euphoria of its cycle right here on Ethereum, and this is euphoria right here on Velo, the same point in the cycle. And down here is depression on Ethereum, and down here is depression on Velo. So this is the point of maximum financial opportunity with the minimum financial risk. You can even see the same ABC correction down here on Velo that happened on Ethereum. So this, to me, this is just the same story, different day. Same story, different day. So yeah, I do expect a big run coming on Velo to who knows how high, but this thing is also worth fractions of a penny, just like Telcoin is. This is worth 0.006 cents. You guys, this stuff is dirt cheap. People think crypto is overvalued, but if you have your glasses on and you're seeing things correctly, if you have your, pretend you had a pair of glasses that just told you the truth, if you put those on, you would see that this market is undervalued, not overvalued. It's undervalued. So definitely be aware of how big the opportunity is on coins like Velo, how big the opportunity is on coins like Telcoin to buy the dip here in the big picture in preparation for a big run. And even if we zoom in here too on Velo, let's pretend, okay, that you guys are a little bit more skeptical. You don't want to see a big picture pump. You think it's crazy when people show stuff like that because you've never seen crypto and what it can do in the big picture. Even in the short term here on Velo, we have an ABC correction right here. This thing is doing exactly what happened to Nakamoto Games. So if you pull up Nakamoto Games here and we take a look at what happened to Nakamoto did the same thing, you guys. Big pump, big correction. It's at support now. This thing's ready to reverse. Velo's ready to reverse. This is our lower trend line down here. Lowest trend line. I expect a strong reaction for Velo soon. So it's only a matter of time for this coin before it turns around and starts to go up in the short term as well as the bigger picture before we see a violent recovery on the upside. We're on support. Okay? If you go buy a book about trading and investing, okay, you go spend some money on education instead of just shooting in the dark and hoping that you make money. If you actually take this seriously and start learning, you're going to find that what is one of the first rules of trading and investing? You don't sell support. You buy support and you sell resistance. And Velo right now, here on the 4-day candlesticks, we're on support. We're not on resistance. We're on a major trend line. We're on horizontal support. Same with Nakamoto Games. Similar structure. Went a little bit lower than Velo's going to go here, right? But it's the same structure here in Nakamoto Games as well. Same pattern of human emotion. So this is where you should be buying, not selling. So I encourage you guys to invest in education, whether you buy coaching, whether you buy books, whether you do both. If you want to get stuff out of this market in terms of profit, you're going to have to take it seriously and invest in education. The best way to make progress in life is to take something seriously, because you get out of something what you put into it. And if you're not putting into these markets enough learning, if you're not taking it seriously enough, you're going to be swayed by the emotions of people, swayed by the opinions of men, swayed by the internet, and you're going to make a lot of bad decisions. So invest in education. It's one of the best things you can do with your money, is to invest in education. So let's pull up silver. We've got a silver request. Let's do some silver analysis. One of my all-time favorite charts. I love silver. I've been a big silver bull. I was a silver bull down here because of this ABC correction. I've been looking at this chart, especially right here in 2020 when we crashed right here. I became a big silver bull. I'd been bullish on it for a while because I'd been studying market cycles and learning about human emotion. And silver, to me, when it was worth about $11 per ounce down here, looked exactly like the NASDAQ, because I'd been studying these cycles like every day, every night, sleeping with market cycles in my dreams. I'd been obsessing over these charts, learning everything I could. And I remember when silver hit $12, I thought, this is the most bullish freaking chart ever. This thing is going to go to the moon. Why? Because I had been studying the NASDAQ. And if you look at the NASDAQ composite during the internet bubble, which is a perfect classic example of a market cycle and the human emotion that occurs inside of markets, I had seen what happens when you get a big parabolic run, followed by a big correction, followed by another run and another correction. You can see right here, This is the NASDAQ Composite Index during the internet bubble, and the internet bubble pop, and then here's 2008, and there's the recovery that came after. This is the stuff I talk about in these live streams over and over again. Okay? I've talked about this hundreds of times. This should be no surprise to you that silver is pumping right now. Because right here, when silver was worth $11 per ounce, it looked exactly like the NASDAQ right here in 2008 and 2009. You know, history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. You can see subtle differences. The double bottom was bigger than it was on silver. On the NASDAQ, you had a bigger double bottom than it was on silver. But it's the same story. It's the same cycle. So how high do I think silver is going to go? Well, $56. I would bet pretty much my life on it that $56 is not the top here on silver. We are nearing our old all-time high right here, and you can see that the NASDAQ Composite Index did see a bit of a correction right here towards its old all-time high. Silver could see a small correction here, totally open-minded to it, but in the big picture, silver is set up to go running to the moon, just like what happened after the internet bubble popped. So the internet bubble popped, everybody thought the stock market was dead, but really it was the best opportunity ever to buy the dip. And you can see what happened to the stock market after the internet bubble popped. Look how big the recovery was on the stock market. Absolutely insane. We ran all the way up to $24,000 per NASDAQ Composite Index share. Okay, that's pretty amazing, considering the fact that we were worth $1,300 down here in 2009. That's an astronomical run. So the future is very bright for silver. We've got a lot of upside, not without corrections along the way. You can see how some of these V-shaped recoveries here on the NASDAQ would have shaken people out of the market. They were calling the top right here. They were calling the top right here. They were calling the top right here. And they were calling the top right there. They're going to do the same thing with silver. It's going to run up. It'll see a correction. Everybody will think it's the top. Everybody will think it's the top. But silver will continue to trend up as it breaks out of this big market cycle double bottom. So these cycles repeat. The psychology is the same. It doesn't matter. People always say, Dallin, you can't compare apples to oranges. Okay, well, guess what? I'm not. I'm comparing human emotion. So I'm comparing apples to apples. Even though they're two completely different industries, the chart represents human emotion, not the industry. Because these markets move because of human emotion. That's why human psychology is the most fundamental thing that they teach you when you become a professional trader or investor like on Wall Street. They teach you about the human emotion. That's why all the best, richest investors like Warren Buffett talk about human emotion, being greedy when other people are fearful, and being fearful when other people are greedy. That's human emotion. So these charts are painting pictures of human emotion over and over again. And it doesn't matter if it's silver, if it's Bitcoin, if it's gold, if it's the tulip bubble, that happened back in the day when tulips ran. It's all human emotion. And it's all profitable if you understand how to map out that emotion. So no, I don't compare apples to oranges. I compare apples to apples because I'm comparing human emotion to human emotion in these charts. That's so profoundly powerful to understand. That's how you can cut through all the noise and see the market for what it is. So for me, the fact that silver is at $56 per ounce, I was calling for this when silver was $12 per ounce. I was calling for a big picture breakout all the way to a new all-time high. For the OGs that have been following my channel for a long time, you guys have known that I've been bullish on silver for a very long time. Big rounded bottom, super bullish to see this big rounded bottom. This thing is going to skyrocket. Not without corrections along the way up, but this thing is going to skyrocket. I can firmly firmly state that with confidence. Okay, let's see here. Nutcracker 34 says, do you think H bar could reach 50 cents this cycle? I think 50 cents is pretty low for a target for H bar. Let's pull up Hedra here and check out the chart here. Let's pull up the full chart. Isolate this. Pull up H bar. I think it's on Bybit. Should have the full. Nope. Let's go over to Binance. There we go. So H bar. Let's go to the 15-day candlesticks here. So H bar, it looks amazing to me. This is a perfect setup. If you guys don't know, this is what you want to see. Just like I've been talking about with the internet bubble, the big pump that happened, and all of the stocks that happened during the internet bubble. I've talked about this so many times, so I know it's repetition, but repetition creates learning. So this is important to understand. Thing is, everybody talks about the pump that happened in the internet bubble. Nobody talks about the recovery that came afterwards. If you want to make money in these markets, go study the stocks that pumped during the internet bubble, crashed, and then recovered. Go look at the ones that pumped, crashed, and then recovered. Those are the ones, and look at the ones that didn't recover too, so you can see the cycles and what happens when demand drops off a cliff or a company gets sued or whatever, Study those too, but especially study the good-looking setups and imprint those into your mind, because it's going to give you a pretty good idea of the way these markets move. And H bar is Amazon. If you want to study the cycle, H bar did what Amazon did. Here's Amazon on the right, and here's H bar over here on the left. This is the same chart. This is the same cycle of human emotion. So here's the internet bubble on Amazon right here. Here's the internet bubble pop, obviously. Here is the beginning of a new cycle. As you can see, the money coming back into this market, but still highly volatile. Look how brutal that correction was in 2008 and 9. Brutal. Well, 2009 it started to recover, but 2008, look how brutal that correction was. Now, if we look at H bar, here's the 2021 crypto bubble. Here's the 2022 crypto bubble pop. FTX crash, whatever you want to call it. Here's the early signs of a recovery. Now tell me that this point right here doesn't look like this right here. To me it does. To me, this is the same story happening over and over and over again. Just a different technology, a different day, but the same story. So I'm super bullish on H bar. Do I think it could go over 50 cents? I think it would be extremely ridiculous not to call over 50 cents per H bar. I think a break of the all-time high is extremely probable and likely in the big picture. And that break above that all-time high level, who knows how high it's going to go after that. It really just depends on how good the demand continues to grow, because demand drives price, and demand creates human emotion in these markets. So this Amazon cycle here is a really good example of how a market can pump, pull back over 90%, look like it's dead, recover, and go to the moon. And there's a lot of cryptos that look just like this. So I'm a big bull on H bar. I have been for a long time. I've been a bull on H bar since down here. When I really started to compare it to Amazon, I've been comparing H bar to Amazon since pretty much 3 cents per H bar, because I was looking at these cycles and studying the human emotion. And even both of these charts too, if you zoom in right here on like just the correction. Okay, let's isolate just the correction here. And you just look at here's the internet bubble on Amazon. Okay. Here's the crypto bubble on HBAR. So we're just isolating just this one point in the cycle. Look how similar the topping structure is. Right? We have our peak right here, but then we come back down in a big crash. We go back up to the peak. We're not able to break above that peak, so the market's now looking like this, right? We're not really able to break. We break a little bit up above, but we're not able to do it with strength, right? And that creates a big double top, and the market crashes. Well, look at what happened to HBAR during 2021. I mean, we have a peak right here. The market crashes. We go back up to try to break above. We're not able to sustain it. We get a little bit above, but we're not able to sustain it. Big double top. The market dumps. So it's cool to see. It's cool to see the same story happening. Patarone says, hello, Dallin. Thanks for the live stream. Are you bullish on Shiba Inu and Pepe? Let's pull up Shiba Inu and Pepe here. So if you guys don't know, Shiba Inu, pretty much the same thing that happened to Bitcoin. So let's pull up Bitcoin here. Let's pull up, yeah, this chart should work actually. Here on, no, that doesn't go quite far enough back here for some reason. Let's pull up BTC on Bitstamp, I guess. So, and let's pull up Shiba somewhere where we have the full chart if we can. I think on KuCoin they do. Yeah, there we go. That's more of the chart at least. So, in terms of where Shiba Inu is at in its cycle, very simple, very easy to see. So we have our parabolic run here on Bitcoin in 2017, our crash that happened in 2018, then we get a big double bottom, right? Big double bottom pattern, back down to support. And this is the same thing that happened here on Shiba Inu. You can see a big run here in 2021, followed by a big correction, followed by a pump, coming back down to support. So right here in 2020, when Bitcoin was worth 3,700 per coin, that's the disbelief phase of the cycle. This is the same point in the cycle that the NASDAQ composite index was in 2008, before we had the full recovery and everything. That's where Shiba Inu is at in its cycle. In terms of market cycle, that's where we're at. It's undervalued down here. We should see a strong recovery in this market. So that's my view on Shiba Inu. I'm definitely a Shiba Inu bull, if you're wondering. If we pull up Pepe here, I'm bullish on crypto, you guys. Like 2026 is going to be way crazier than what people think. Mark my words. If we pull up Pepe here, Pepe is doing what's called a first sell-off pattern. So let's go back over to not Bitcoin, but we'll pull up see what's a really good example of a first sell-off. Well, actually, yeah, we will use Bitcoin, because here's a good example of one. So here's a market cycle on Bitcoin, right? So this 2017 run became the first sell-off of the next bull run. So if you pull up the market cycle chart on Google Images, and we pull up, I forgot to put cycle, market cycle chart on Google Images, and we'll pull up this one right here, okay? Because there's a few examples. This is one of my favorite examples right here. So this on Bitcoin right here, everybody was bearish on Bitcoin in 2018. But if you guys have been following me for a while, you guys know I was super bullish on Bitcoin down here at 3K. Way bullish. Why? Because I knew that this whole pump right here in 2017 and the whole crash in 2018 had become the first sell-off of the new cycle. Because these cycles repeat, right? People get too excited, they get too fearful, and it happens over and over again. So that first sell-off pattern right here before the next parabolic run happened in the market, In 2018, when everybody was calling for $1,000 per coin on Bitcoin, I was super bullish on Bitcoin. At the bottom in 2018, and especially at the bottom in 2020, when everybody was crazy bearish, I was super bullish on Bitcoin right there. Okay. Because I knew where we were at in terms of the cycle. We were at the first sell-off pattern before running up into a new cycle. So if you want to know what's happening to Pepe right now, if Pepe looks like this confusing chart that you don't understand, I will show you what Pepe is doing. Pepe is doing what Bitcoin did right here in 2017 and 2018. That is the first sell-off of a new cycle. So don't be shocked if in 2026 we get another run on Pepe up to a new all-time high. Because buying Pepe down here is a lot like buying Bitcoin down here in terms of its cycle. So you have to be able to understand context of cycles. This is how professionals are able to spot these big picture moves, buy when nobody wants to, print money, make stupid amounts of profit, and go run from these markets and do whatever they want to do with all their money, or short the top. This is how they're able to do it, because they understand the context of the cycle. So I'm a big bull on both Pepe and Shiba Inu. I love meme coins. I've made so much money on meme coins. And people always make the argument, you guys, if it doesn't have real world value, why should you buy it? Well, if that was a valid argument, then meme coins wouldn't pump in the first place. But they do pump in the first place. So you have to follow demand. Demand can be created because people think something is funny. Demand can be created because people think something is valuable because of real world value it's creating. There is nothing wrong with making money on meme coins. If you make $5 million buying a meme coin, and then some guy that bought a project purely because of fundamentals makes $100,000, guess what? You're better of a trader and investor than that guy that made $100,000. There's nothing wrong with taking advantage of extremely euphoric, emotional cycles that can print money. I made a bunch of money on Pepe shorting right here because it was doing the same moves as Ethereum, but it did a bigger percentage gain. I turned $180 into over $15,000 in the period of just playing around for fun in the period of a week or two. Shorting Pepe because it was following Ethereum, but it was doing bigger percentage gains. So there's nothing wrong with trading or investing in meme coins if you understand the cycle, the context of the cycle. You buy when people are afraid. You buy, like right now on Pepe, really good entry in preparation for the big run. 2026 is going to be big for crypto, meme coins included. Ron Klaus says, Dallin equals light in the darkness. Well, thank you. I hope that I can shine some light on these markets to keep you guys making good decisions, clear-headed, not panic selling, because I do see big things coming, and I would hate to see people panic sell in this market. William Harvey says, hello, Dallin. Looking forward to the biggest transformation of wealth in the world's history. Me too, William Harvey. It's going to be so fun. It's going to be super exciting, super profitable. I'm super excited. 2026 is going to be a big year for crypto. First Man 4430 says, will XRP go to an all-time high by the end of this year? I don't know, but I do expect a new all-time high coming for XRP, especially in 2026. I see the rest of 2025 being bullish now that we've had a correction, now that 90% of everybody is super bearish right now. I do see the rest of 2025 being very bullish. If we break above the old all-time high, if we get close to breaking above the old all-time high, that I don't know for sure. But I do expect in 2026, XRP will have absolutely no problem breaking above the old all-time high. In my last live stream, people asked me if I thought XRP was dead, And I explained to them that every time I've ever seen people thinking XRP was dead was a really good time to buy. Uh-oh. Is my stream still going? I accidentally pressed airplane mode on my computer. um, let's see if the stream... Is the stream still going, you guys? I accidentally pressed airplane mode for a second on my computer, so I hope the stream is still working and still going here. I got to figure out how to turn that airplane mode button off because I've accidentally pressed it, not in streams so much, but I've accidentally pressed it quite a few times, like trying to use my computer and stuff. It's just a bad spot to put an airplane mode button, but whatever. I love my laptop, so it's whatever. So anyways, back to what I was saying. Every time I've ever seen people call XRP dead, really good time to buy. People are saying XRP was dead right here. I remember it was the biggest, everybody on X was saying XRP was the biggest joke ever, that it was never going to recover. You know, had all these negative things to say about XRP down here. Best possible time to buy was right there at those lows. It pumped so hard, and people are calling XRP dead again. So if XRP breaks above the old all-time high before the end of the year, it's possible, but I definitely expect throughout 2026 for XRP to obliterate this old all-time high at $3.65. No problem. So it's been a struggle to purchase some XRP, but so far I've managed to accumulate 314. That's a good start. You know, XRP is a good one to hold. Having a little XRP stack like that, I think you're going to be glad that you do have that stack. Because here's the thing. This is a running flat pattern right here on XRP. So this is a continuation pattern. In terms of Elliott wave principle, this is wave 1 and wave 2. We still haven't even had wave 3 yet. This is why 2026 is going to be a good year for crypto. Wave 3, wave 4, and wave 5 should happen all throughout 2026. And this is all wave 1 and wave 2. This running flat correction here is wave 1 and wave 2, part of a bigger picture uptrend starting to form here on XRP that nobody knows how high it's going to go. And if anybody tells you they know exactly where it's going to stop, they're lying. But the fact of the matter is the fifth wave could be extended. So according to Elliott wave principle, commodities markets and like gold and silver and sometimes equities too, but this happens with crypto as well. You'll get extended fifth wave. So instead of the fifth wave looking like this, where it's just a little bit above the top of wave 3 right here, with crypto, we get extended fifth waves pretty frequently. So the fifth wave could go pretty high here on XRP. This is only the start of something big in the big picture for XRP. So let's see. Thank you, my brother, for the encouragement. Well, thank you for tuning in to today's stream. So yeah, that's pretty much my view. We've got big things coming in the markets. 2026 is going to be a big year for crypto. Firmly believe that with all of my heart. I'm very excited about 2026. 2025 was kind of a disappointing. You know, everybody thought it was going to be a big run. But like I said before, now that everybody thinks 2026 is going to be a big bear market, just like how they thought 2025 was going to be a big bull market for crypto, now 2026 should be a huge bull market for crypto, and it'll do opposite of what everybody thinks it's going to do. So I'm super excited. Big things are coming. You guys definitely check out my one-on-one coaching. Last day of the sale, 50% off. You're not going to get a discount like that again for a while. 50% off all of my VIP products, whether that's a single coaching call where I hop on a call with you and do a single an hour-long coaching. Sometimes they run a little bit over an hour, but about an hour to help run over your portfolio, help you get set up for the most money you can possibly make in coming years. or whether you want to do 12 weeks of coaching with me, 1 hour a week for 12 weeks. Even if you have to take a week or two off sometimes, we can work that out. But 12 weeks of coaching to become a master of these markets and to understand the principles that you can consistently profit and predict these markets in an effective way. 50% off on one-on-one coaching, or whether you just want lifetime VIP investing signals. And follow coins like Zcash that we bought at the exact bottom before Zcash pumped when nobody was calling for a pump on Zcash. We bought down here. Literally perfect entry at like $46 on Zcash before it pumped all the way up to where it's at now. You know, all the way up to 741, and it's at 456. So lifetime VIP investing signals, 50% off. Take advantage of the Black Friday sale while you can. Link in the description. Just use the code Black Friday for 50% off on all VIP products. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I love and appreciate every single one of you. I am going to play a quick song on my guitar because I feel like I should. We'll call it a day. And yeah. So there you go, you guys. Thank you for tuning in. I love you. I appreciate you. That was Nearer My God to Thee on the guitar, one of my all-time favorite songs. I had the opportunity to play that song for both my grandma and my grandpa before they passed away, so it's one of my all-time favorite songs, near and dear to my heart. Again, I love you guys. I appreciate every single one of you. I'm super thankful for you. I hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving with, whether you spent time with family or just even if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope you enjoyed your weekend. And yeah, take advantage of the one-on-one coaching, the lifetime signals, or even just a single coaching call, 50% off. I'll see you guys in future videos and in future live streams. Big things are coming in these markets, you guys. I really firmly believe that with all of my heart. So be ready for some awesome, exciting, profitable moves ahead. And I'll see you guys later. And as always, stay profitable out there.